Sizing the male tenon when you're doing hand thread chasing can be a real challenge. In this video, I want to demonstrate how you can use the Sorby Threading and Sizing Gauge, and I'm going to also show you a couple of other methods. Let me start with some background. Why do we normally cut the female threads first and then cut the male threads to fit? Well, answer is easy. These are a little harder to cut. First of all, it's harder to see on the inside when you're hand thread chasing. Plus, if you sized it to this and you screwed this up, you know, your lid is gone. And if you've got two pieces of matching wood, you know, you got a real problem with your box. Maybe you might as well throw the bottom away. So that's why you almost always cut the female threads first, and then you fit the male thread to it. So let me show you the advantage of that. So let's say we got a female thread and we got that cut on the lid. Now we're sizing the male thread. Well, what happens if we screw up? Oh, not a problem. We just part this off and start over again. And if you've got a sufficient size piece of wood, you don't have any problem. Maybe the worst case is your box gets a little bit shorter, but you can account for that error. So after you successfully cut the female threads, you typically size the male tenon. Now, a common method is shown in this diagram is you measure the female recess, and then you add some factor for the thread depth on each side. You know, it's going to be 2 times the thread depth. Now, here's how the jig works. Works very, very simple. You just use these little calipers like this, separate them like this. I use this jig on 3 boxes. This is the first one, 16 TPI. The details are going to be in the third box, so just be patient, and there might be some overlap. I rough turned this box, oh gosh, probably 10 years ago, out of mountain mahogany. It's really hard, high desert, very dense wood, no resemblance to mahogany. They just call it mountain mahogany, but it's a really great thread chasing wood, very dense. I'll do just a little bit more of lubricant there for the last few threads. And you just use some Minwax paste wax. Rub it in. After several attempts at threading, reducing size of the tenon, threading some more, reducing size of the tenon, I finished with this nice box, 16 TPI. This, and then you tighten them up. Double check it, and I would say that it's just about spot on. So we go a lot slower with a 10 thread per inch than we do with a 16, so it's a little harder to learn on because you have to move faster. Now we're going to slow this down below 300. Maybe somewhere around 275, 280. I'm going to lift the handle up, drop the teeth, do some dry runs, then we're going to hit it. And now I've got a clean initial strike. I can go ahead and put a recess back here. I'm just going to use a 1/8 inch parting tool. It'll be a little bit wider recess than I need, actually. Now slow the speed back down, 275, 280. Take that male thread again, lift the handle. I make the strike with about the second tooth. I've got flat crests here, so they're not as deep as they could be. So let's do a trial thread fit. Not even beginning to slide on, which tells me that these need to come down just a little bit. So let's take it down just a bit. After several
attempts at threading, reducing the tenon slightly with the beading and parting tool, threading, reducing with the beading and parting tool, and threading, I finally get a decent box.
So I've turned the female threads on this little Osage orange box, and now we've got to factor in, the size for a male thread. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to use the Sorby Threading and Sizing jig, and we're just going to slide this in and until it's snug against the female recess and tighten it up. Got 2 tightening screws, and I want to make sure it's snug, which is not, because we're dealing with just thousandths of an inch. Let's tighten it up just a little too much. Okay, I think I've got it nice and snug. Okay. And try it in the other direction. It's still nice and snug. Okay, now what we're going to do, that sizes the inside, and it also sets the size of the male by picking the right little tab. And it has 3 tabs, one for 20, one for 10, one for 16 TPI thread sprint. So we're going to use the one for 16, and that gives us a male tenon just a little bit larger. So now let's turn the male tenon. So we don't have a good way of marking it on here, so I've just got to sort of judge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn a few concentric circles that I think are close, and then I'll double check them against the gauge and decide whether I make it larger or smaller. Let's see how close that comes. Okay, that outside one is just a hair larger, so I will taper it down to that, and then we'll start doing some trial fits. And let's do another one. We have to make the tenon long enough to do about 5 threads. And it looks like we are just on the money, maybe just a tad more. Just dust. Okay. Now we're ready to start thread chasing. The first thing we're going to do is put a little chamfer on the end, of course. Strike the threads with. Part below, slightly below center, and I lift the handle to do that. Okay, so now we're going to start that thread strike. Speed about 310 or so. Yours may vary because we're doing 16 threads per inch. And that's the speed that works for me. Alright, do a few practice runs. I've already put a little paraffin on here to make this slide easier. Wind it down. You're guessing at the speed of the first couple of strikes, but once you've got a thread struck, you look at it, make sure there's no double threads, no drunken threads, and once you do that, now I can go ahead and make a recess in the back to allow me room when I'm coming through here. It's called a stopgap. Before I get to the end, I can pull it out. Otherwise, if I keep on going engaging here, it's going to strip the threads. I'm going to use a 16th inch thin parting tool to cut a little tiny recess in the back. Here we go. This is the fun Zen part. Alright, I've got some pretty good looking threads, so let's give it a try. Oh, this doesn't quite thread on. What that tells me is I've got to take these threads down just a little bit. So with it being a parting tool, I'm not going to take it all the way down, but just take the crests off. Put the speed up a little bit. And I want to keep those struck threads to be able to track against. I'm not starting all over. I'm still using just a faint threads that are there. Slow it back down again. Okay. These nice wispy shavings show me I've got a sharp tool. I've got just flats on it, but they're pretty nice looking threads. I couldn't thread much more before it starts crumbling, so let's see how that fits. Just starts on, but again, it's too thick. So let's take it down a second time. Rub it in real good. Okay. Very nice. I'm happy with that. Now that I've got that done, it's time to use this as a jam chuck, finish the top of the lid. But that's for another day. So the issue is just how good a job does this do? I had to change it 4 times, and that's a function of a number of different things. And you can see it came down quite a bit in the thread chasing process. It's a function of what thread chasers you're using, how dense is the wood, because the thread chasers tend to compress the wood a little bit. How deep did you make the female thread? How clean were the threads cut? Or were they kind of coarse with flats? How fine a thread do you cut here? Does it have flats or does it go deep? So those are all factors. But my conclusion would be that if I had to adjust it 4 times, the tenon was too large. So my conclusion is, yes, this works. And it would probably work for anybody in that it would not give you an undersized tenon, but it'll give you an oversized tenon. And you know, if you're just starting out and you need to practice, that may be a good thing. But if you've been turning for a while, I think it's just going to slow you down. So after using that Sorby sizing and threading jig several times with different threads, I've come to the conclusion that it just doesn't work for me. It always produces a tenon too large. So let me show you another approach, and this is an approach that's been historically used by hand thread chasers over the years. First of all, I'm going to take a very rough measurement of the female recess with the calipers, and then make them just a little bit bigger to get a starting point. And I will just touch this part and watch the other part, see if I can't get close. And that's pretty much on the money. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this down to an 1/8 of an inch stub with this 1/8 inch parting tool. Just a little stub about an 1/8 of an inch long. I'm going to get right down to that number, and then I'll fine tune it. Now let's fine tune it. I've got a slight chamfer on it, and whoops, made it a little bit large. So let's just take it back some. And remove the waste. Slight chamfer on the end, and it's just a little large, so now I'm just going to fine tune it a little bit, just a little bit at a time. And I made this just short of an 1/8 of an inch. Okay, I think that'll be on the money. So I want to fit that steb so it will just fit in here against these threads snugly. That's going to be the lowest part of the tenon. So now I'm going to turn this down, again giving enough room for about 5 threads, and I'm just going to make it larger than this by about a thread depth, 2 thread depths actually. So let's just do that. So now I have to take this down to allow a factor that's approximately 2 times the thread depth, right? One on each side. But as it turns out, that's a theoretical concept, and that's just way too large. So this is too large, so I've got to take it down. So I'm going to use my beading and parting tool for that. And this is the approach that Alan Batty did. This is the approach that the old ivory turner Bill Jones did. It's the way they've done it for a long time. So I'm just going to take it down to what I think is enough. We'll make it parallel. Eyeball that. And now I've just given it a guesstimate. But I look at that and I think, no, I don't think the threads are quite that big. So let me take it down just a little bit more. Now, I'm going to just chamfer that corner there, because that's where I'm going to strike the thread. So I'll use my point tool for that. Just come in at 45. I want to hit it at an angle. Now I'm going to slow this thing down to chasing speed. Now I'm using 16 threads per inch chaser. I'm going to slow this down to hold somewhere around between 300 and 320. That's a speed that generally works for me for this 16 TPI. Okay, I'm going to have the tool rest where I can just lift the handle just a bit. Even though it's got a negative rake, I like to lift it a little bit. And I'm using the Carter & Son hand thread chaser. So I'm going to come in here and just start. Whoop, let's put a little bit of paraffin on here. And start that first thread strike. I mentioned it, but I'm using a holly for this bottom part of the box. Now let me see if I've got some good threads struck. They look clean, so now I can go ahead and put a recess here. I'll use a 16th of an inch parting tool for that recess. Slow back down again and start chasing. Thread chaser back just a little bit. With this whale tail, I've got to give myself a little more support to get back behind it. let me stop and show you what I'm after. When these threads start showing up with scratch surfaces on this step, I know they're deep enough. I've still got flat, so I've got a little ways I can still chase before they start crumbling. Okay, I'm getting some nice looking threads, but I'm not seeing any scratch marks on here, so I can predict that this is going to be too large, and it is. So let's take these threads down just a little bit using the beading and parting tool. I want to leave just a little bit there so I don't have to restrike the threads. I can see that my stop gap, the recess back here that should give me time to pull out, is not deep enough, so let's rebuild it. Slow down again. Whoops, I've got a drunken or kinked thread right here, so I've got a feeling these are not going to work no matter what I do, but we'll keep on going. Usually when you get drunken threads, though, they're not going to work, but chances are this is too large anyway, so I'll have to take this down. Maybe I can overcome that. Looks like it's almost beginning thread chase. Alright, so let's take it down just a little bit. See if I can't straighten that out. But sometimes when you take a surface down, you get a feel for where they're going to thread. So it's getting pretty close right there. So let's cut some threads. Okay, I still got some drunken threads. Don't think this is going to work real well, but beginning to thread on, and I'm beginning to see some scratches on that lead. Still got some flats, almost some flats, so I think I can chase a little bit more. Use a little mocho juice. Now, I've definitely got some threads on that lead, so this ought to be pretty close to the money. And it's threading on. It just needs a little bit more fine tuning. Let's see how sharp these threads are. The crest, they're still kind of flat, so I think I can thread a little bit more without having to take the wood down with a scraper. A little snug. I'm going to take off the first couple of threads because we only need a couple, so let's just do that. I'm going to use a scraper. Let's see, I've still got 4 threads left, so I'll take down one more.
Sometimes it's a little snug. I think I'm going to put a little bit of paste wax on it, and maybe I'll hit it one more time. Only takes a little bit. Now let's use that paste wax. Now let's put some on the internal threads. Okay. A little too tight, which indicates to me that they need to be cut down just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is just barely take this down with a scraper and then touch on it just a bit. Matter of fact, before I chase any more threads, let's just see if that taking it down a little bit will take care of it. Almost. Now I got some flats. Let's go back and touch it one more time. Don't want to overdo it. A little bit snug. But I think with a little bit of wear, they'll be just fine. So, first thing I've got to do is figure out how wide this tenon is going to be to rough it. And I'll do that with some dividers. I'm going to come in here. And I want it to be just a little bit bigger because we're gonna cut threads in it, so it can't be as small as that. So that gives me a pretty good feel for it. And we're going to make sure that we touch this side and not that side. The more practice you do this, the better you get at it. But if you don't feel comfortable doing this, then don't do it at home. I feel like I got that pretty much on the money. So I'm going to come in here with this about 8mm. Here's a machinist diagram for dealing with metal threads, but I have not found that any variation of this has worked very well for hand thread chasing. It may be useful possibly with using a jig. For example, the Sorby Threading Gauge that we looked at earlier sets an additional factor of about 1.5 thread width, which we have found to be too large. If you're going to use this approach, you might try adding a factor of 1 thread width.